Today, what we're going to speak about is every reason as to why you're not making gains and the reason why you're not seeing any progress when you go to the gym. So back in the same gym as always, because it's one of the few gyms in my area, and quite frankly, it's one of the few gyms we can come to late at night with the intention of it being quiet. It's not quiet, unfortunately. Oftentimes people say, I'm seeing no progress, I have no idea what's going wrong. You know what? I'm going to tell you exactly what's going wrong and I'm going to call all of you out and also tell you how to fix it. I'm really hungry. Earlier, I was in the gym, funnily enough, this gym. I saw an individual on the leg extension doing a set while looking at their phone and zoning out into space. And I pondered myself, many people, because it's a common thing I see, deem that to be sufficient intensity when looking at progression. Fundamentally, one of the biggest drivers of progression, whatever you're trying to achieve, is going to be how hard you are doing something. If you're not training with sufficient intensity, you probably aren't going to see the results you're hoping for. And it seems like a really simple fix because it is. Oftentimes when you think you're pushing too, if not close to failure, you're going to stop when you think you can't do more. Your body will obviously hurt. There will be that kind of mental signal where you're saying, this hurts too much, I need to stop doing this, and then you'll stop. But for most people, that stopping point is too far away from failure to actually yield sufficient stimulus for growth. So that's the common meme of training to mild discomfort comes to mind here, because that kind of is what it is. Your mind will probably give out before your body actually does, and you probably have a lot more in the tank than you think you might. So if you're questioning, should I have done more, I challenge you to do more, and when you actually can't do any more, you've probably done okay. Oftentimes when people are doing a working set, they'll be given, potentially by their coach, a rep range of, let's say, 6 to 10 reps, and then they'll choose a weight, and they'll likely stop when they hit that range. The rep range should only be deemed to be a target, not a limit. What you should actually be working towards is an intensity figure. So let's say with a client, I might program 6 to 8 reps at 1 RAL, so meaning 1 in the tank. If the weight they've chosen is too easy and they get to 8 reps and they stop, I say one of two things. Firstly, that doesn't count as a set, go again and go heavier. Or secondly, that doesn't count as a set, do not stop when you hit the rep range, stop when you hit the intensity. So if you do 8 reps and it's too easy and you've got to go close to failure, keep going. Do more reps until you reach that close to failure point. And if that's 12, 13, 14, you know next time to go up in weight. And vice versa the other way. If you cannot hit your rep range, let's say you get 4 or 5, that's okay as well. Work the intensity figure, and the next week you might get an extra rep, or maybe even have to drop a little bit of weight. Rep ranges are targets, they are not limits. So if you're doing a set and your last reps are looking something like this, probably not close enough to failure for it to really do much. Another big mistake people make is the fact that they don't have a clue what they're doing. And I don't mean regarding lack of intelligence or anything like that, I mean lack of plan and structure. The amount of times I've had consultation calls with people where they've said, this is what I do currently, and that currently is I just do whatever I feel like. I mean, that's fine if you want to expect really casual and recreational results, but in reality, to get better at something, it probably needs to be repetitive, and you kind of need to structure a program in accordance to your goals. So going in and saying, I'm going to do what I feel like, isn't really going to get you very far. It may get you somewhere to begin with, but that's going to end real quick. What I would typically say is when structuring your plan is you need to first identify how many days a week can you realistically train. You may want to train 3 times a week, but realistically you can only do 2. So you program for 2. And that program is going to be ideally trying to hit everything sufficiently at least once a week, but ideally twice a week. So if you have 2 days, I might do 2 full body days where I hit everything equally across those days. And I make sure in that I do at least 1 pulling motion, maybe 2. At least 1 pressing motion, be that a horizontal press or a vertical press, so chest or shoulders, depending on what your goals are, and usually 2 leg movements, be that maybe a hamstring movement and a quad dominant movement. You do that a couple of times a week with sufficient intensity and repeat that for a period of, let's say, 8, 12, however many weeks, aiming to progressively overload, you're probably going to be okay. And if you aren't sure, tfnl coaching is always linked down below in the description, so if you're bored and have some free time, fill in the application form and you and I can hop on a free Zoom consultation call where we can waffle about your goals and I can tell you a bit more about coaching to see if it tickles your pickle and appeals to you. If you're just pondering around the gym and essentially jumping from machine to machine, choosing anything that's actually available to you, this indicates you've got a lack of structure, which means you're probably not going to see results you're hoping for because you're never doing the same thing twice and you can't really identify whether you're progressing or not. It's one thing consistently showing up and turning up to the gym perhaps, but it's another thing consistently putting in the work. Another point, number 4 here, is a bit of a controversial one, especially in the modern age of the internet, and that's paralysis by analysis. And what I mean by that is people overcomplicating things and they probably haven't been training long enough to really justify doing that. For example, many people may see this as a very standard sagittal plane, formerly known as iliac pull down. which is fine, that's fantastic. But too many people will latch onto the idea of they must train certain muscles in certain positions to target certain fiber divisions. For example, when doing this, where you're working the sagittal plane, being arm in front of you, we know that the primary emphasis is shifting to the upper two divisions of the lats, being the upper division and the middle division of the lats. So essentially being the thoracic and the lumbar fibers of the lats. Is that really relevant or applicable to most people watching this? Probably not. And I think too many people will place too much emphasis at this stage anyway, especially beginners, on targeting and biasing too many fiber divisions of certain muscles, when in reality, they probably just need to train consistently and probably a bit harder than they're currently training. That being said, another thing we can consider, too many people also going through the loop of I need to work on this muscle group because it's lagging behind my other muscle group. When in reality, if you're new to the gym or in your infancy of training, we'll say, you probably don't need to hyperfixate on which muscles are lagging, because quite frankly, to put it bluntly, everything is probably lagging and everything needs to be developed pretty equally. You worry more about fiber divisions and optimizing your training and optimizing your physique development with such analysis further down the line once you've already nailed variables to a consistent degree, such as recovery, training, nutrition, in addition to having trained long enough to really justify actually doing so. So if you're new to training or in your infancy of training, I wouldn't hyperfixate or stress too much about where your physical weaknesses are when it comes to a developmental perspective. That's something you can worry about later down the line. Unless you're a competitive bodybuilder, in which case it's something you probably need to worry about from the get-go, as your stage presence will be heavily influenced by your physique, and you will be assessed on your developmental weaknesses. Fifth and final point I wanted to address, and this is something we're all guilty of, even myself at times, is believing nonsense online. In addition to that, not only believing nonsense online, but trying to change what you're doing and implement everything you see online. That's not gonna be good for the old gains. You kind of need to identify what your goals are first and then break it down to their simplest form. For example, if you want to lose weight, its simplest form there is really gonna be eat less, move more. If you want to build muscle, the simplest form there is gonna be something along the lines of resistance train and try and get stronger. Try and do more every week, reps or weight, whatever it may be. That's simplified. Obviously you can expand on that and elaborate to then further optimize and all that good stuff, but that will get you somewhere if you do those things. There are going to be so many influencers and individuals online that will sell you all these pipe dreams of if you want to build muscle, if you want to lose weight, do this secret thing that's going to be incredible. Don't listen to it. And quite frankly, if you are going to listen to it, do what you're doing now for a period of time. See if that works for you or not. If it does work for you, fantastic. If it's not broken, don't fix it. If it doesn't work for you, then you can maybe consider trying something new. If you bounce from one thing to the other, you're not only going to limit your results, you're also going to end up risking neglecting something that might have worked. Be confident in what you're listening to online and who you're listening to. Do your own research. Does this sound too good to be true? Because if it does, it probably is. Another thing you can also question, although not massively applicable, but I do think there is some relevance here, is are they qualified to speak about what they're speaking about? Do they have a qualification of sorts, even just a personal training qualification? Sure, you don't need one, but I do think there is an element of credibility there. I would say hope that they might know what they're talking about, but to be frank and to be blunt, most trainers in the industry that I have come across personally actually don't know what they're talking about. The word optimal or optimization gets thrown around online quite a lot recently. The point I want to kind of bring there is that just because somebody says something is optimal doesn't mean it is. And you justifying that I do this because this science-based creator said it's great probably isn't necessarily justification enough to do something. If you put some very well-known individuals in the science-based training space, let's say Dr. Mike Israetel, Paul Carter, and Jeff Nippard, all in the same room, they will disagree on a lot of things. But why would all these very educated and optimal science-based creators disagree so much? Or maybe there is simply more than one way of doing things optimally. What is optimal is also largely dependent on you, because what's optimal for me and my goals may not be optimal for you and your goals. To recap, I've presented 5 points which I believe are probably greatly hindering many people's results. If you adhere to what I've stated throughout this video and improve on these points, be that your intensity, your plan, your consistency, you will most likely see results, if not at least better results than you are currently seeing, because these are all fundamental aspects of progression that many people overlook. To implement these 5 things, do them better or to a better standard than you are currently doing them. And if you aren't sure where to go from there, as always, TFNL coaching is linked down below in the description. So if you fancy it, fill in the application form, hop onto a free Zoom consultation call with me, and we can waffle about all of these things in greater detail and better refine them and apply them to you and your goals. Are the Perform protein bars good? Thanks for tolerating me, and thank you for tolerating the video. Like and subscribe.